Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. Army men everywhere. That was a sight to see at this very well-balanced army base. Battle tanks could be seen parked in various spots while others were driving around. Men swarmed everywhere like an army of ants. Others were driving trucks full of cargo and pulling them into the garages. The general, a man with gray hair and a straight face, was giving out orders to every soldier before him. "Load all up," he yelled to his men. "Get it all in there." "Yes, sir," his lieutenant nodded before leading a squadron of the men indoors. There was a large assortment of ammunition inside of the trucks, as he could see. Several of the men unloaded from the back and hurriedly rushed them into the building. One soldier tried speaking into his walkie-talkie, but could not hear it over the commotion. He hurried to the other side of the building, not exactly quiet, but enough for him to hear. "Say again, Lewis," he said into it. "It's time," the voice from the walkie-talkie answered. "Have the trucks returned yet?" "Yes, sir," the soldier answered. "All but one. 5th squad hasn't come back yet." "Good. Better get yourself inside," came Dockson's voice. "Things are going to get messy." "Roger that." He then turned it off. General Larson waved to his troops, guiding the trucks into the garage. "Be careful with that stuff. It's very valuable." "Lieutenant Harding?" "Yes, sir," asked his lieutenant. "Is everybody here?" "Not quite, sir," Harding answered. 5th squad must still be scouting the area. Better check in with Daniels at the gate." The general then pulled out his walkie-talkie and spoke into it. "Daniels, do you have a visual on 5th squadron? Over." "General Larson, I have not yet found 5th squadron. What the voice on the walkie-talkie was going to say next was cut off by something neither the general nor his lieutenant could make out. It sounded like a bellow of some sort. Next they heard something like two large objects slamming together, like a pair of rocks, and they swore they could hear Daniels yell before a volt of loud static rung through the little device. Larson cringed at the static, hurt his ears slightly. "What happened, sir?" Harding asked. "Signal must have cut off," Larson assumed. "Should we go check it out?" "Affirmative," Larson said as he walked down the trail towards the gate. But when he made it there, he could see a shadow coming towards him. Not from the ground, but from above. He looked up to see a large object falling towards him from the night sky. He quickly dove out of the way as the sound of it crashing to the ground filled his ears. He raised his head to see what it was that nearly crushed him. One of his army trucks. He felt someone pull him back to his feet. "Come on, sir!" Larson heeded Harding's words and ran after him back towards the base. As they rushed back to the garage, a new sound filled their ears. It was a pounding sound like thunder, and yet it was much worse. They both felt the ground shake beneath their feet. When they made it back to base, what they saw was unlike anything they could have ever imagined. Standing at 12 feet at height, a creature was laying waste to everything in front of it. The animal's skin was a dark red with black spots and stripes on it. On top of the large snout stood a small spike. The most terrifying thing about this animal was that its eyes were a pale white, as if it were some sort of ghostly apparition. "Harding," Larson said as he stared up at the beast, soldiers running past him. "What do you call that thing?" "Ceratosaurus." It was no surprise to the general that Harding was familiar with dinosaurs since he had worked at the first park on that cursed island. "But I thought they died on Sora." "What?" "Ceratosaurus was never brought to Newport, sir," Harding said as he stared at the dinosaur in awe. "They were only located on the breeding grounds." "By gosh." The ceratosaur bellowed out and looked as he grasped his large jaws around one of the fleeing army trucks. The men inside yelled and tried to break free, but were pushed back by the force of the jaw muscles. The dinosaur blew the truck into one of the tents as it charged towards the soldiers, running from the sight. What they saw before them caused them to flee back in the other direction. Another dinosaur had entered the camp. This dinosaur was a foot taller than the Ceratosaurus and was blue with a yellow underbelly. Along the spine was a line of small but noticeable spikes that ended on the back of the head. On both sides of the head, right above the eyes, stood a pair of red V-shaped crests. And like the ceratosaur before it, its eyes were pure white. The blue dinosaur took notice of one of the soldiers and chopped down on him, devouring him in a matter of seconds. It then let out a shrill roar full of joining the ceratosaur and destroying the camp. Allosaurus. What? Larson said. Allosaurus, Hardy repeated. Rival to Ceratosaurus. Why are they working together? Darned if I know, Larson answered. But now would be a good time to hide. The two men quickly ran behind one of the tents as the soldiers were running everywhere. Trucks overturned. Tents torn up. The two dinosaurs had thrashed everything they saw to ruin. The unfortunate men who came too close to them had met a swift end by being picked up by either one's jaws. Hardy could not help but stare at the wreckage that had once been the prestigious military camp in which he had worked. Larson also watched this unfold. What he was seeing made his blood run cold. He quickly ran towards the garage where his men were pouring in like ants at their mound. Get in! Now! Larson quickly waved his arms in the air to try and get the attention of his troops, but they were yelling too loud for him to fear. He turns his head to see the ceratosaur lifting another truck in his jaws. It then swung its head fast and opened its jaws, letting the truck fly through the air. Larson ducked down as the truck impacted the building. The explosion that erupted from the vehicle as it smashed against the side nearly deafened him. He felt himself being knocked back by the blast, landing flat on his back. He heard the roar of the ceratosaur as he felt its footsteps just as much as he could hear them. He panted as he struggled to get back to his feet. He saw Harding getting into a truck with several other men driving towards him. Get in, sir! He yelled out to his general. Larson climbed into the back as several other trucks followed close behind. One truck next to them had some of its guns still workable, one of which was shooting at the allosaur. The blue predator looked at the truck shooting it, shaking off the attacks like a dog. To their horror, the soldier in Harding's truck realized that guns were not having any effect on it at all. It wasn't even bleeding. No! Larson yelled out, trying to get their attention. Stop! But it was too late. The allosaur ran next to the truck as it continuously shot at it. And then, with a swift motion, the dinosaur clamped down on the top of the truck and pushed it over with no effort at all, crushing it and all of its passengers beneath its mighty foot. It then raised his head to look at the direction of Larson and Harding's truck, soon taking off after it as the ceratosaur continued to destroy the camp behind them. The caravan of surviving trucks, although greatly few, sped as fast as they could through the entrance with their pursuer close behind. The allosaur leapt up and broke through the large sign that stood above the ground before resuming its pursuit. It bellowed out again as its fangs dripped with the blood of the soldiers it ate. But then it stopped. It raised its head to the air as if it were listening to something. Briefly, Larson heard it. It was some sort of barking sound, but it also sounded like it was automated. As he looked back at the allosaur, he saw it turn and run back to the woods. He saw the shape of the ceratosaur darting up the road towards its companion. But it was not alone. Something smaller, about 5 feet in height, was running on 2 legs and rushing into the woods, being followed by the 2 larger dinosaurs. Their footsteps becoming more silent before finally fading from ear range. Larson could very well see the orange glow of the burning remains of Fort McCoy, now a great distance behind them. It had all happened so fast. In the 3 years since the dinosaurs were released into the world, there had never been an attack like this before. Among everything that had happened that night, he could well remember the eyes belonging to the 2 dinosaurs. White? Why were their eyes white? For all he knew, it could have been some sort of disease. Harding, holding out up there? Affirmative, sir. What are your orders? Get us somewhere safe, Larson sighed as he took off his hat. I need some scotch. Basilton knew he had made the right decision by signing up with Biosyn. He always disagreed with General Larson's order and hoped to get the better of his ill-fated authority. He knew one day his government would crumble, but he never truly had the means to bring such a thing about. But when he learned that InGen had failed again in 2015, he knew that he could gain profit in one form or another. He lifted his walkie-talkie back to his mouth and spoke into it again. "Lewis, it's George again. The mission was a success. The whole place is in shambles. Send me a transport if you will. One more thing. The Ceratosaur could do with a quieter approach." "Affirmative, Basilton," Dockson's voice replied, sounding very pleased. On to Phase 2.